Hurst. I'm going to be talking about discrimination.
Hi, I'm Frank Johnson. I'm going to be talking about sexism.
Hi, I'm Sanjay Jaj. I'm going to be talking about racism.
Hi, my name is Mai, and I'm going to introduce our topic for you, which is prejudice. Prejudice is briefly defined as a preconceived judgment of a group and its individual members that is not based on reason or actual experience. Prejudice is close to both stereotyping and discrimination, however, they are not exactly the same, so I'm going to clarify the difference between them. While prejudice is more of an affective feeling, stereotypes are learned cognitive labels. Stereotypes are beliefs and opinions about characteristics, attributes, and behaviors of members of different groups. Discrimination is actual behavior that are often driven by prejudice. Discrimination is when you treat people differently from others based on membership in a social group. But having knowledge of stereotyping beliefs doesn't mean you have to be prejudiced, and being prejudiced does not mean you must discriminate, even though they often overlap. There are two levels of prejudice. Implicit prejudice is a reaction towards groups of individuals that are outside conscious awareness. Explicit prejudice is attitudes that people are aware of and can easily control if they try. Racism and sexism, which we are going to cover now, combines prejudice with a group-centered worldview.
Racism is defined as prejudice, discrimination, or antagonism directed against someone of a different race based on the belief that one's own race is superior. The belief that all members of each race possess characteristics, abilities, or qualities specific to that race, especially so as to distinguish it as inferior or superior to another race or races. An historical example of this would be the Rwandan genocide. Extreme prejudice and its consequences are at work here. The Rwandan genocide started as the simplest of prejudice. When the nation was first taken under control by the Germans in the late 1800s, they favored the Tutsi population over the Hutu, as the Tutsi were lighter skinned and therefore racially superior. From here, the two groups only became more divided, as often happened between in-groups and out-groups. In the 1970s, several Hutu power groups started to form, and by 1994 had enough institutionalized power that the ethnic cleansing of the Tutsi people commenced. 500,000 to 1 million people died during this genocide, a genocide which had its roots in racial prejudice of people who weren't even involved. The Rwandan genocide shows a clear example of the extremes of prejudice. This example may seem extreme to us, but it was not until the Act of 1964 that racial equality was established as an American norm, and racism changed from being normal to being bad. Here's when racism changed from being explicitly accepted to more implicit embedded in situations and institutions. Contemporary examples include ethnocentrism and patriotism versus outright racism, white privilege, racism more subtle, hidden, implicit today than throughout history, embedded in institutions, racial profiling, people of Middle Eastern and Southern descent routinely being profiled at nations' airports, Black and Latino men have been disproportionately targeted by New York City police departments as Department Stop and Frisk program.
Sexism is an individual's prejudicial attitudes and discriminatory behavior towards people of a given sex, or institutional practices that subordinate people of a given sex. This includes behavior, conditions, or attitudes that foster stereotypes of social roles based on sex. Historical examples of this include that women could not vote or serve in combat in the military and were expected to do all the housework. Today, women still do not get paid equally with men. This article on Bloomberg gives an example showing that Goldman Sachs pays women 56% less than their male colleagues and 72% less in discretionary bonuses. One cause for this is the glass ceiling, a metaphor used to represent the barrier to advancement in a profession to a given demographic, including women and minorities. While women face the glass ceiling, men have a glass escalator, which occurs in women-dominated positions such as nursing, where men are put on a fast track to higher up positions, especially in lower levels of the profession.
In contrast to prejudice, discrimination is negative behavior towards a group and its members, not just a negative attitude. Prejudice towards disabled people seems to be less ingrained in people's minds than other kinds of prejudice today. However, disabled people often have more discrimination to contend with. During the Holocaust, the Nazis murdered many people with disabilities, along with the Jews and homosexuals. Those who were not killed were often sterilized so they could not pass on what was deemed inferior genes. The 2017 musical film The Greatest Showman is an example of discrimination against disabled people, as well as individuals who face other types of discrimination. Barnum's Circus becomes a haven for them. They are at first ridiculed for their differences, but eventually their performances become celebrated by the public and they gain a sense of acclamation. The 1932 film Freaks deals with the same topic as The Greatest Showman. However, the film paints the circus performers in a more sinister light that is likely more accurate to the time period's perception of the disabled than The Greatest Showman's portrayal. Niall DeMarco's appearance on Dancing with the Stars is another example of the inaccuracy of society's prejudice and discrimination against disabled individuals. They are often kept from participating in activities because they would not be able to keep up with the normal people. The man in this video is completely deaf and perfectly able to learn a dance routine with music and perform it admirably. The policies and restrictions placed on the disabled community often do not reflect their true capabilities. Between now and then, the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990 was passed. The act is a civil rights law that prohibits discrimination based on disability. It affords similar protections against discrimination that victimizes Americans with disabilities as the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which made discrimination based on race, religion, sex, national origin, and other characteristics illegal. In addition, unlike the Civil Rights Act, the ADA also requires covered employers to provide practical accommodations to employees with disabilities and enforces accessibility requirements on public spaces.
Sometimes I try to do things and it just doesn't work out the way I want it to, and I get real frustrated. And like, I try hard to do it, and I take my time, but it just doesn't work out the way I want it to. It's like I concentrate on real hard, but it just doesn't work out. And everything I do and everything I try, it never turns out. It's like I need time to figure these things out. There's always someone there going, hey Mike, we've been noticing you've been having a lot of problems lately, you need to maybe get away. And like, maybe you should talk about it, you'll feel a lot better. I go, no, it's okay, I'll figure it out. Just leave me alone, I'll figure it out, I'm just working on it myself. They go, well, if you want to talk about it, I'll be here, and you'll probably feel a lot better if you talk about it. So why don't you talk about it? I go, no, I don't want to, I'm okay. I'll figure it out myself. And they just keep bugging me. They just keep bugging me. There's bills on the side. It's got me, it's just life will come. I'm afraid what's my side. You will laugh and say, I'm afraid what's just to get away. I'm not crazy. Here's the result. You're the one that's crazy. Here's the result. You're driving me crazy. Here's the result. They stick me in an institution that was the only solution to give me a professor. I'm protecting from the enemy myself. I was in my room, and I was just like staring at the wall, thinking about everything. Then again, I was thinking about nothing. And then my mom came in, and I didn't even know she was there. She called my name, and I didn't hear her. Then she started screaming, Mike, Mike! And I go, what? What's the matter? She goes, what's the matter with you? I go, there's nothing wrong, Mom. She goes, don't tell me that. You're on drugs. I go, no, Mom, I'm not on drugs. I'm okay. I'm just thinking, Why don't you give me a Pepsi? She goes, no, you're on drugs. I go, Mom, I'm okay. I'm just thinking. She goes, no, you're not thinking, you're on drugs. Normal people don't act that way. I go, Mom, just give me a Pepsi, please. All I want is a Pepsi. And she wouldn't give it to me. All I wanted was a Pepsi. Just one Pepsi. And she wouldn't give it to me. Just a Pepsi. Keep my shirt with my sleeves. Not me back to see a sleeve. Just empty, just lazy. It's the word now. Crazy. I'm not crazy. Here's the vision. You're the one that's crazy. Here's the vision. You're driving me crazy. Here's the vision. They stick me in an institution that was the only solution to get me in from the crowd. Protecting from the enemy myself. I was sitting in my room. My mom and my dad came in. They pulled up a chair and they sat down. They go, Mike, we need to talk to you. I go, okay, what's the matter? They go, me and your mom, we've noticed lately you've been having a lot of problems. And you've been going off for no reason. And we're afraid you're going to hurt somebody. And we're afraid you're going to hurt yourself. So we decided that it would be in your best interest if we put you somewhere where you can get the help that you need. And I go, wait, what are you talking about? We decided my best interest? How do you know what my best interest is? How can you say what my best interest is? What are you trying to say? I'm crazy? When I went to your schools, I went to your churches, I went to your institutional learning facilities. So how can you say I'm crazy? Say to go to pick my brain, leave me suffering at my face.